Have you ever said yes to someone when everything inside you was screaming no, simply because you did not want to disappoint them or make them feel bad? Have you ever worked so hard to make everyone around you happy that at the end of the day, you looked inside yourself and found nothing left? No energy, no joy, no peace? Have you ever been so kind and so giving to the people around you that they began to take you for granted, as if your time, your help, and your heart had no value at all? If yes, then this story is for you. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between two green hills and a quiet river, there lived a man named Thomas, a farmer known throughout the entire village as the kindest soul anyone had ever met. Thomas could never say no to anyone if a neighbor needed help fixing a fence. Thomas would drop everything and come running if someone needed food. Thomas gave from his own table if someone needed comfort. Thomas would sit with them for hours even when his own work was waiting and his own heart was tired. People loved Thomas for this. They called him generous. They called him good. And he wore those words like a warm coat because deep inside, being needed made him feel worthy. Being helpful made him feel loved. And he believed that the more he gave, the more people would care for him in return. But seasons passed, and slowly, quietly, something began to break inside Thomas without him even noticing it. His own farm, once full of color and life, began to look tired and neglected because he was always too busy helping others to tend to his own crops. His own body grew thin and pale from exhaustion, and the smile he wore in front of others would disappear. The moment he walked through his own front door and sat alone in the dark, one evening, after spending an entire day helping a neighbor build a new shed while his own roof was leaking, Thomas came home completely broken, sat on the cold floor of his small house, and felt tears fall down his cheeks without warning. Because in that moment he realized something painful and undeniable. He had given everything to everyone, and not a single person had come to check on him. Not one. The next morning, he walked to the edge of the village where an old woman named Mara lived alone in a simple stone house surrounded by a beautiful garden. Mara was known as a wise and thoughtful woman who had lived through enough of life to understand what most people spent years trying to learn. Thomas sat with her and told her everything: the exhaustion, the emptiness, the feeling of being used without anyone even realizing it. And Mara listened without rushing him, without offering quick words of comfort. She simply listened until he was finished. Then she stood up slowly, walked to her garden, and pointed to a large fruit tree standing near the wall, its branches hanging low and heavy. "Look at this tree," she said in a calm and steady voice. "Every season it gives fruit to anyone who comes, the children, the birds, the neighbors. It gives and gives without holding anything back. But do you see how I water it? How I feed the soil around it? How I protect it in the winter? Because a tree that only gives and is never cared for will one day stop bearing fruit entirely. Its branches will dry, its roots will weaken, and it will have nothing left to offer anyone." She turned and looked at Thomas with gentle but serious eyes. "You are that tree, Thomas, and you have forgotten to water yourself." Those words entered Thomas slowly and deeply. like light entering a room that had been dark for far too long, and he walked home that day carrying them carefully inside his chest. That week, for the first time in years, Thomas said no, quietly but firmly, and instead of spending his day at someone else's farm, he spent it on his own, repairing, planting, resting. And by the end of the day, his hands were tired, but his heart felt lighter than it had in a very long time. Week by week, he continued this way, still kind, still generous, but no longer empty. He helped others from a place of strength rather than fear, and the people around him, sensing the change, began to treat him with a new and quiet kind of respect. So, my friend, if you have been living like Thomas, pouring yourself into everyone else's cup while your own remains dry, remember that kindness given from an empty heart helps no one. Not even the person you are trying to help. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to take care of yourself first. Because you cannot water anyone else's garden if your own roots are dying of thirst. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Tales with English, where every story helps you learn English and learn life.